My name is Celeste Holloway, and I'm 82 years old. If you ask anyone in this town, they'll tell you I'm the quiet lady who lives in the stone house on the edge of Briar Hill, the one with the ivy crawling up the chimney and a garden full of tulips, even in autumn. What they won't tell you because they don't know, is that for 7 years I was locked in a room with no windows, no voice, and no one to save me. You think I'm exaggerating, don't you? I would too if I hadn't lived it. It happened the day after my 75th birthday. Tuesday. I remember the morning air smelled of cinnamon from the rolls I baked myself. My daughter-in-law May never lifted a finger. My son Carter had promised to visit. Instead, May showed up alone, her car idling in the driveway like she didn't plan to stay long. She hugged me too tightly and smiled too wide, like a woman who already knew something terrible was about to happen. "We're taking you to a new place, Mama," she said. "It's better for your memory." "My memory is fine," I replied, narrowing my eyes. But they didn't care. They didn't take me to a home with nurses or gardens. They drove me to the back of Carter's property, an old guest house that hadn't seen daylight since the Clinton years, and locked me inside. Literally. Key turned in the door behind me. I stared at it, not quite believing what I'd heard. Thought it was a joke. Waited. Hours. But no one came. There were no windows. The only light came from a dusty ceiling bulb that flickered like it, too, wanted to disappear. There was a single bed, a bathroom, and a tray of food left on the floor. I was 75 years old, and they had shoved me into a cage. No one told the neighbors. No one asked my opinion. And Carter, he didn't even say goodbye. My voice didn't matter anymore. Or so they thought. First I cried. I screamed. My throat grew raw, begging the walls to answer me. Days passed. Maybe weeks. Eventually I stopped screaming. That's when I started writing. I found an old box of notebooks in the corner, under a dusty sheet. As if the universe had left them just for me. I wrote everything. Every memory. Every betrayal. Every word they thought I was too old or too broken to say. They took away my voice. But they forgot to take away my pen. And in that silence, a story was born. One day they would read it. The world would read it. And when they did, they'd learn what really happened in that room. What they did to me. And what I did in return. Because I didn't stay broken. Well, got smart. And I found a way out. But the moment I made that first entry, the moment I dared to write down the truth, I heard something outside the door. Voice. Not Carter's. Not May's. Stranger. Someone was watching me. And that's when I realized. I wasn't just a prisoner. I was part of something much bigger. Something darker. Something I was never meant to survive. But I did. And now, I'm going to tell you everything. I didn't breathe. The sound of footsteps outside that locked door pulled every muscle in my body tight. The silence I'd become used to, embraced even, was suddenly full of threat. And promise. I just scribbled my final sentence that day. They forgot to take away my pen. And that's when I heard it. The shuffle of shoes, slow, deliberate, the weight of someone pacing just beyond the thin wooden door. Then a whisper. Not May's screechy tone. Not Carter's baritone. This voice was soft, hoarse. Well, and afraid. "She's still in there," the voice murmured. Another voice answered, too muffled to make out. Then silence again. I dropped the notebook on the bed and tiptoed across the cold linoleum, pressing my ear to the door. My heart thudded like it had grown fists and was pounding to be let out. I heard the creak of footsteps walking away. And then, nothing. Who were they? How long had someone else known I was locked in here? And if they weren't Carter or May, why hadn't they helped me? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept the light off, afraid they'd come back. I watched shadows dance across the ceiling. My notebook clutched against my chest like a shield. By morning, the tray of food had been replaced. But now there was something else. Folded napkin. My hands trembled as I opened it. One sentence, written in hurried black ink. "Keep writing. Someone is reading." I stared at it for a long time. My thoughts swirled like smoke. Was it a trick? Some cruel game May had cooked up in her twisted mind? Or Was it real? Someone was reading my story. Someone knew I was here. That changed everything. I didn't eat. I didn't rest. I sat at that small desk, hunched over page after page, pouring every scrap of memory I had into that notebook. My childhood in Mississippi. My teenage heartbreak. Meeting Henry Holloway in a diner off Route 60 when I was 22. The wedding. Babies. The miscarriages I never told anyone about. The way Carter used to beg me to sing him to sleep. The way he used to love me. And then, the change. It had started years ago, long before the locked door. I just hadn't seen it. When Henry died, Carter stepped up, but not as a son. As a gatekeeper. A warden. Every year he took a little more control. My bank account. My medications. Phone. First I thought it was love. Concern. But love doesn't feel like a cage. Then came May. May with her perfume that gave me headaches and her cold, perfect smile. May who once whispered over dinner, "Carter and I are thinking about renovating the house after. You know, you're gone." I'd laughed. She hadn't. Kept writing. I wrote like my life depended on it because it did. And every morning without fail, a new napkin would appear. Sometimes it would just say, "I'm still here." Other times it would say things that made my blood turn to ice. They know I know. Don't trust the nurse. There's a second door. A second door. That had to be a lie. I'd searched every inch of the guest house in the first few weeks, pounding on walls, hoping for a weakness. There was nothing but drywall, dust, and the overwhelming stench of old wallpaper glue. But now, I began to look again, and then one morning I found it. It was behind the wardrobe. I'd never bothered to move it. It was too heavy, too pointless. But that day, I summoned strength I didn't know I had and shoved it an inch. Then another. Until the edge of something caught the light. Seam. A thin vertical crack in the wall. My heart pounded. I grabbed a hairpin and dug at the edge. Nothing. The crack wasn't even a door, it was a panel. Fake wall maybe. That night the napkin read, "You're close. Keep pushing." So I did. For 2 more days I clawed at the seam. I snapped spoons, broke fingernails. And then on the 3rd day it moved. The panel groaned forward like it was exhaling decades of secrets. Behind it. Staircase. I gasped so loud I thought someone might hear me. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the wall to keep from collapsing. It was real. Way out. But I didn't take it. Not yet. Why? Because I had to finish the story. If I left too soon, they'd bury what happened to me. They'd spin it. Say I wandered off in a fit of senility. Say I was crazy. But if I could finish the notebooks, leave them somewhere public, then the truth would outlive me, even if I didn't make it. So I made a plan. Every day I wrote. Every night I memorized the stairs. And the napkins. They kept coming. Until one day they didn't. No message. No tray. No sign. Waited. One day. On the 3rd day I heard shouting outside the door. May's voice. Then Carter's. And then, a new voice. "You think locking her up erased what she knows. You think that'll stop her." It was the stranger. The one who left the napkins. May screamed something I couldn't make out. Then came a gunshot. I dropped to the floor. Breath caught in my chest. I waited for hours, pressed against the panel door, my notebook under my arm. The silence was different now. It wasn't the silence of control. It was the silence of collapse. Something had broken. And I didn't know what I'd find when I opened that hidden door again. Days blurred together like watercolors left in the rain. I couldn't tell you how long I sat curled in that corner of the guest house, pen in hand, memories leaking onto the pages like blood from an old wound. The notebooks became my anchor. They reminded me I still had something left, my story. But the presence outside the door, that haunted me more than the silence. It began subtly, whispers. A scrape of movement. A breath held too long. Not Carter. Not May. This was someone else. And I needed to find out who. The morning after I first heard them, I pressed my ear to the floor. Dust tickled my nose, but beneath it, beneath the cracked old wood, I heard, humming, faint, like a tune remembered from childhood. It stopped the moment I shifted. Whoever it was, they were listening as much as I was. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I wasn't alone. I began leaving notes. I tore out pages from my journal and slid them under the door. Just a single line at first. "Who are you?" The next day, I found a scrap of paper slipped back, folded tight. The handwriting was shaky. "Here too." My heart thundered in my chest. I hadn't imagined it. I wasn't losing my mind. Someone else was here, in the crawlspace. Beneath the floorboards. Another prisoner. Where? I scribbled back. The answer took 2 days. Below. Left of the heater vent. That night, I dragged the small table across the room and knelt beside the old rusted vent. My hands trembled as I pried it open with a fork I'd hidden from my tray. Cold air hit my face. And movement. A sliver of an eye. Face. Bill. Hello. Her name was Ginny. She was younger than me. Maybe late 50s. Her voice was rough, not from age, but from disuse. Like a violin string wound too tight for too long. She'd been there 2 years, she said. Locked in the crawlspace. Used to be May's aunt. They said I was crazy, she whispered through the vent. That I wandered. Forgot things. But I remembered too much. I saw things I wasn't supposed to. What things? Asked. Ginny hesitated. Money. Ways. Something about a trust fund in your name. And Carter. He wasn't always this cruel, you know. May. She changed him. I backed away, heart pounding. A trust fund. That night, I dreamed of Jacob, my late husband, standing beneath the tulip tree in our backyard. He looked sad. Tired. He whispered. They took what was ours, Celeste. Don't let them bury you too. The next morning, I searched the room with renewed urgency. I found a loose panel behind the dresser. Inside, old financial papers, a key with no tag, and a photo. Jacob, Carter, and a younger May. Behind them, the stone house. My house. Only. Something about it looked wrong. The tulip tree was missing. Struck me then. This wasn't just about cruelty. It was about erasing me. My home, my legacy, my voice. And Ginny. She was a witness they'd tried to hide. I knew what I had to do. I wrote. Not just my story but Ginny's too. I detailed every word she said, every whisper through the vent. I folded the pages into a book. My book. And I hid it behind the loose panel just in case. Because I knew something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. And I was right. That night the door creaked open. But it wasn't Carter. It wasn't May. It was someone I hadn't seen in 30 years. And the moment she stepped into that room, everything I thought I knew about my family cracked wide open. The door groaned open on rusted hinges, and in stepped a figure who belonged to another time. Another life. The air shifted, dense with a memory I hadn't called on in decades. She stood tall, in a worn navy coat and boots scuffed from travel. Her gray hair curled beneath a weathered scarf, but her eyes, those sharp, unblinking eyes, I recognized them instantly. Lydia, I whispered, as though saying her name might make her vanish. She didn't speak right away. She closed the door gently behind her, locking it from the inside. Her gaze swept the room. Cold bed, empty tray, open notebooks stacked like fragile soldiers, and then finally settled on me. You're still writing, she said, her voice soft and graveled. My mouth hung open. Lydia Dawes. My sister-in-law. My former sister-in-law. The woman who vanished the year after Jacob's funeral, right after the will was read. You're supposed to be dead, I murmured, stunned. She gave a bitter laugh. Aren't we all in some way? I sank to the edge of the bed, my legs trembling under the weight of history. Lydia had once been my closest friend. We were bonded by marriage and shared grief. Our husbands were brothers, both gone far too soon. We raised our kids side by side. We hosted Thanksgivings together. But when Jacob passed and Carter's behavior turned cold, Lydia had disappeared. Some said she left for Arizona. Others whispered she'd gone mad. But I knew better. And now here she was. She took a step closer and crouched near the open vent. Her eyes flicked toward it, then back at me. "You've met Ginny," she said. I nodded slowly. "She said May locked her down there." "She did," Lydia confirmed. "But not just for wandering. Ginny saw the documents. The ones Jacob had locked in his office. The ones that proved you, not Carter, were the rightful executor of the estate." I felt the room spin. "But the will?" "Forged," she said, cutting me off. "Or at the very least, manipulated. May had it rewritten when Jacob was in hospice. Drugged and dying. He didn't even know what he was signing." I stared at Lydia, bile rising in my throat. "And you, where have you been?" "Hiding. Watching," she said. "I've been trying to collect enough proof to stop them. I tried to warn you years ago. But they cut me off. Threatened me. Made me look unstable." I felt tears pool in my eyes. "Why now? Why come back now?" "Because the book you're writing. It's dangerous to them. Someone leaked it. Maybe Ginny. Maybe one of the aides who takes the trash. But they know you're telling the truth, and they're scared." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small flash drive. "This has the original deed, bank statements, and a voice recording from Jacob, days before he passed. It's all here. Enough to get your house back. Enough to make them pay." I stared at the flash drive like it was a sacred relic. Proof. Vindication. "But why bring it to me now?" I asked again, more desperate. "Because I'm dying, Celeste," Lydia said. "Pancreatic. Stage 4. I won't be here to see justice. But you can. You must." The silence in the room thickened. My breath caught. So many years. So many lies. Then a sound, a familiar click. The outer door. A step. Lydia's eyes widened. "They're coming." Before I could react, she shoved the flash drive into my hand and darted toward the vent. "Tell Ginny the time's come. Tell her to get ready. There's a storm about to break, and you're at the center of it." She vanished into the shadows, just as the door burst open. May stood there, eyes blazing. She didn't speak at first. Her gaze scanned the room like a predator searching for blood. Her hand twitched at her side. "You've been talking," she said finally. Her voice was too calm, too sweet. "I've been writing," I replied, lifting my chin. "Isn't that what old women do?" May's smile faltered. "It's time for your medicine." "No," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me." "I said no," I repeated. "I don't need your pills. I need a lawyer." May stepped forward. "What did you say?" "I want my attorney. I want my son. And I want the police." Her jaw clenched. "There's no one coming for you, Celeste. No one believes you. You're just a sad, confused woman playing pretend." I stood slowly, my hands shaking, but not with fear. With purpose. "I might be old. But I'm not confused. And I'm not pretending. You locked me in here. You silenced me. But I have a story to tell, and the world is listening." May's mask cracked then. Just a flicker. But enough. She turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because Lydia was right. Storm was coming. And I was ready to walk straight through it. I barely slept that night. That voice, the stranger's voice outside the door, had burned itself into my bones. It wasn't Carter, not May. It wasn't any of the nurses I'd grown used to hearing shuffling through the hallway like shadows in cheap sneakers. 'Twas new. Will. Steady. Almost too calm. He had said my name like he knew me. Not just the sound of it but the weight behind it. Celeste Holloway. 2 words spoken gently. But with purpose. All night, I sat up in the corner of my bed, notebook in hand, the pen trembling between my fingers. I'd written for months by then. I'd filled pages with heartbreak, betrayal, memories of childhood in the Carolinas, and the faces of people I hadn't seen in 40 years. But never once had I heard someone say my name who wasn't trying to strip it from me. Till now. By dawn, the silence had returned. My food tray hadn't arrived, which only happened once before, and that was when May got too busy and forgot. Or so she claimed. But this silence. It didn't feel accidental. It felt planned. Around mid-morning, I tiptoed to the door and pressed my ear to the cool, warped wood. No footsteps. No voices. Just the steady, rhythmic hum of the ceiling fan above me, blades clicking every 5 seconds like the heartbeat of the room. Then I heard it again. Not a voice this time. Scrape. Metal against metal. My breath caught. I crouched, trembling, heart racing, and peered through the narrow crack beneath the door. A slip of something pale and rectangular slid beneath it. Paper. My fingers darted out and snatched it like it might vanish if I waited a second longer. It was a note. Scrawled in pencil, in rushed, uneven handwriting. I know what they did to you. Stay quiet. I'm working on a way to get you out. Don't trust the cameras. Blinked. Cameras. I looked around, suddenly feeling watched in a way I hadn't before. I checked the corners of the ceiling, the vent above the bathroom, even the socket behind the old lamp. Teeny. Tucked into the woodwork, nearly invisible. Lens. How long had it been there? Was that how they knew when I stopped screaming? When I started writing? When I'd hidden food to save up for strength? The rage that exploded inside me could have burned the whole room down. I wasn't just locked away. I was being watched, studied, controlled. Why? My thoughts spiraled, jumping to impossible conclusions. Were Carter and May hiding more than just cruelty? Was there money involved? A will? A life insurance policy waiting to be signed? Or worse, had they sold me out to someone who wanted me gone? I clutched the note like it was oxygen. I didn't know who this mysterious person was, but they knew. And they were trying to help. Least, hope they were. Because if not, I was already halfway buried. That evening I did what I never thought I'd do. I wrote a message back. On a scrap torn from my notebook, I scribbled in my smallest, most precise handwriting. Who are you? Why are you helping me? I slid it under the door and waited. Hours passed. No reply. By the second night, exhaustion took me like a wave. I drifted off with the note still clutched in my fist. When I woke, there was another slip of paper. My name is Thomas. I used to work for your family. You don't remember me, but I remember you. You were kind when no one else was. I owe you. Gasp. The name hit me like a bell from the past. Thomas. Tiny 10-year-old Thomas who used to mow the lawn for Carter. The shy kid who wore hand-me-downs and sat on our porch swing while I brought him lemonade. He used to hum when he worked, like his own secret song was always playing in his head. That Thomas. How could he possibly be involved in this? I fumbled through the pages of my journal, rereading the memories I had of those days. Carter had fired him one summer for breaking the garden hose and never let him back. But I remembered how Thomas used to thank me with a drawing every week. Little sketches of birds and trees and animals he dreamed of seeing. He had talent. He had light in him. And now, he was watching over me. I pressed my hand against the door. Thomas, I whispered. You're my miracle. The next few days moved like syrup, slow, sticky with dread and hope. Thomas slipped me more notes. Each one careful, each one full of instructions. He told me which corner to avoid so the camera wouldn't catch me writing. He warned me when May was on her way. He told me the code to a small hatch hidden behind the bathroom mirror. I had never noticed it before. With shaking hands, I pried it open. Inside was a small flashlight, a map of the guesthouse floor plan, and a key taped to the back wall. Thomas was planning my escape. But there was one more note, hastily written, with one final line. They know you're writing. You're running out of time. My heart thundered in my chest. Had Carter found out? Had May seen something? I started to tremble, not with fear but with fury. They took my freedom, my dignity. They would not take my truth. That night I wrote faster than ever. I recounted everything. How I ended up in that room, the betrayal of my own blood, the voices that kept me company, and the hope that one day someone would read it and know I was still here. I wasn't gone. I wasn't broken. I was biding my time. And when I escaped, they would know what it meant to underestimate a woman who still had fire left in her. The final line of my entry that night. You tried to bury me. But I was a seed. And I was starting to bloom. You can't understand the weight of fear until you've hidden the truth in plain sight. Every day for nearly a year I wrote in secret. I filled page after page with every detail they wanted me to forget. The way Carter looked away when I begged him to unlock the door. The way May smiled when she said, "This is for your own good," and turned the key. I wrote about my first love, the smell of my mama's kitchen, the child I lost in 1963, and the shame I was never allowed to speak of. All of it poured out through my pen like a dam bursting. It wasn't just a diary anymore. It was a rebellion. But rebellions have a price. It happened on a gray morning in March. Rain tapped the roof like a warning. I had just finished scribbling a passage about my sister Lily, the one person who used to tell me I was destined for something bigger, when I heard it. Key. Turning in the lock. My blood turned to ice. I barely had time to stuff the notebook under the mattress before the door swung open and May stepped inside. Her heels clicking like a metronome of doom. She was holding a box. "Morning, Celeste," she said with a smile too tight to be kind. "We're doing a little spring cleaning today." My heart pounded. She'd never brought a box before. I watched as she started rummaging through drawers, opening closets, checking the tiny cabinet under the sink. She was looking for something. Looking for me. Not me, the woman in the chair. Me, the woman who had started writing. Then she moved to the bed. "Time for fresh linens," she chirped. I stood up too fast. "Leave it," I said, too sharp. She froze. Her eyes narrowed. "Are you hiding something, Mama?" I smiled, trying to soften it. "Just old bones and tired memories." She stared at me a second too long. Then, without a word, she ripped the blanket off the bed and tossed the pillow aside. I couldn't breathe. Her hand reached down and pulled the mattress up halfway. And then she paused. Right there. Just inches from the spiral notebook stuffed in the corner. She didn't see it. Instead, she yanked the mattress down, muttered something about calling a cleaner, and turned to leave. "Wait," I said. My own voice startled me. She stopped in the doorway. "Yes." I swallowed. "Why did you bring me here, May?" She blinked. "You needed help." "No. You needed silence." Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. When she was gone, I collapsed on the bed, clutching my chest. That was too close. Too close. That night I made a decision. I couldn't risk hiding the pages here anymore. If they were found, all of it, my voice, my power, my story, would be destroyed. I had to get them out. But how? That's when Thomas came through again. His next note was shorter than usual. "Be ready Thursday at 2 a.m. There's a vent behind the mirror. I'll get the pages." The vent. I'd seen it. I'd even opened it once to find the flashlight and map he left me. But could it really work as an escape route for the notebooks? I spent the next 3 days carefully tearing out the most important entries. Stories of the betrayal, the hidden camera, Carter's forged signature on my medical documents, and even the moment I first heard Thomas outside my door. I bound them with twine I pulled from the old mop in the bathroom and wrapped them in a towel. When Thursday came, I was ready. I stayed up all night. At exactly 2 a.m., I opened the vent and slid the bundle through. On the other side, I heard a quiet whisper. "I've got it." Then silence. I wept. Not out of fear, but out of something I hadn't felt in years. Oh. The next morning something changed. I could feel it. Carter came. He never came. He stood in the doorway, not entering, just watching. "May says you've been writing," he said, eyes sharp. Froze. "And that someone's been helping you." He stepped forward. "We tried to give you peace, Mama. But you just don't know how to rest." Rest. They always say rest when what they really mean is disappear. "Who's helping you?" he demanded. I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "I saw the footage," he hissed. "The camera in the ceiling. You covered it with a sheet. You thought I wouldn't notice." I stared at him, my face calm. "You were always clever," he said, voice bitter. Even now, you're playing the victim. I'm not playing anything, I said. He stepped back. You just remember who controls the locks, Mama. And then he left. That night, there was no tray of food. No sound. No light. Just silence. They were trying to scare me. But they didn't know, they couldn't possibly understand, that you can't scare a woman who has already survived everything. By now, my voice was out there. My words were in Thomas's hands. And I had one last plan left. The next morning, I pretended to be weaker. I coughed, shuffled my steps, stared blankly at the floor like I'd finally given up. May peeked in around lunchtime and smirked. I think it's time to tell the doctors you're ready for the next stage, she said. Play dumb. What stage? Oh, she cooed. Something quieter. She meant sedation. I knew it. She left the door open a crack. Just enough. Just as Thomas had said it would be. I waited until night. Until the whole house was asleep. Then I moved. Quiet as breath, I slipped through the door and down the narrow hall, following the chalk marks Thomas had left. They were tiny, almost invisible. A child's doodle here, a bird there, but they pointed the way. To freedom. To vengeance. To truth. When I reached the back exit, I saw Thomas waiting in the shadows. He looked older than I remembered. Graying beard, tired eyes. But when he smiled, I saw the boy who once drew me pictures of dragons and hope. Ready, he whispered. He nodded. We slipped into the night like ghosts. He took me to a safe house. A small cottage outside town that belonged to his cousin. No cameras. No Carter. No May. For the first time in years, I breathed without fear. Thomas made tea. I sipped it slowly. Then he slid a laptop in front of me. Your story's online, he said. What? I scanned your pages. He uploaded them to a blog. It's going viral. He clicked a link. And there it was. The Woman in the Room. A Survivor's True Story by Celeste Holloway. My words. My pain. My truth. Thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. People were reading. People believed me. I've already sent it to journalists, Thomas said. Lawyers too. This won't be buried again. I couldn't speak. Tears streamed down my face. After all these years, the world finally knew. The morning after my story went public, I woke to a sound I hadn't heard in years. Phone ringing. It wasn't mine. Mine had been taken from me long ago. But Thomas's cell buzzed on the kitchen table, lighting up with notifications like a slot machine gone wild. He glanced at me, eyes wide. Your blog's trending. Trending. I repeated, still getting used to the sound of my own voice being taken seriously again. People are sharing it, Celeste. Thousands. There's even a hashtag now. You're being called the woman who roared. I let out a small laugh. It caught in my throat like a fragile thing learning to fly. But with every laugh, there's always an echo waiting. By noon we received the first threat. An email. No subject line. Just a single sentence. Shut it down or we'll shut you down. Thomas read it aloud, his face hardening. Carter. Yes. He nodded. Or someone working with him. They're scared. I should have been afraid. I should have panicked. But instead I felt steady. For 7 years I had begged to be heard. Now they were the ones begging for silence. We drove to the courthouse that afternoon. Thomas had already found a lawyer willing to take my case pro bono. A woman named Margaret Gaines, tough as nails with a voice that could split granite. When I walked into her office, she stood, shook my hand and said, "Let's make them regret underestimating you." We filed the paperwork to open a civil suit for elder abuse, false imprisonment, medical fraud, and emotional distress. But I knew it would be more than a courtroom battle. Carter wouldn't just roll over. He'd fight dirty. By the next morning, the local news station called. They wanted an interview. I hesitated. My hands trembled just imagining it. Camera in my face. Questions about things I still wasn't sure I could say without breaking. But then I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Not the ghost of a woman I once was, but the woman who had survived everything. Yes, I told them. I'll do it. The station sent a young reporter named Valerie to conduct the interview. She was barely out of college, nervous, polite, but her eyes held real empathy. We sat on the front porch of the safe house, the air warm with spring. Tulips bloomed beside us. I wore my best sweater. My spine was straight. When the camera started rolling, Valerie asked, "Mrs. Holloway, why did you write your story?" I looked straight into the lens and said, "Because for too long people believed I was too old to matter. They took away my voice, my freedom, and my dignity. But they forgot one thing. You can't bury the truth forever." The interview aired that night. It broke the town wide open. Neighbors who once waved politely from a distance were now flooding the blog with comments of support and horror. Some couldn't believe what Carter and May had done. Others confessed they'd always had suspicions. But not everyone was cheering. By the next day, Carter had lawyered up. He released a statement through his attorney calling me confused, manipulated, and unstable. May went one step further. She filed a petition to declare me mentally unfit. We were served the papers during dinner. Thomas read them aloud, jaw clenched. "She's trying to take back control," he said. "If the court declares you incompetent, they can silence you again." "I won't let them," I said, steel in my voice. But inside I was shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Margaret moved fast. She scheduled an independent psychological evaluation, and the doctor, a man named Dr. Levy, met me at the safe house the next morning. He was quiet, respectful, and thorough. He asked about my memory, my thoughts, my story. At the end of the visit, he shook my hand and said, "You're the most lucid woman I've spoken to this month." When he testified in court a week later, he declared me fully competent and mentally sound. May's petition was thrown out. But the court hearing revealed something more. Evidence Thomas had found while combing through old property deeds and bank records. Carter had forged my signature on the sale of my own home. He'd transferred the deed into a holding company, one registered under May's name. They hadn't just imprisoned me. They'd stolen everything I had. It was like watching a house of cards fall in slow motion. Piece by piece, the court case built steam. The blog was picked up by a national outlet. "Elder abuse survivor fights back after 7 years of silence," the headline read. Suddenly, reporters were knocking. Interviews, podcasts, offers for book rights. But I wasn't after fame. I was after justice. I sat through every court date. Wore the same blue dress I'd worn on the day Carter graduated college. I wanted him to remember who raised him, who gave him everything, and who would now take it all back. The day of the verdict came 6 months later. The courtroom was packed. Cameras, reporters, spectators, even people from my church who hadn't seen me in years. Carter sat at the defense table, pale and hollow-eyed. May wouldn't meet my gaze. The judge read the decision slowly. Guilty of elder abuse. Guilty of fraud. Guilty of unlawful imprisonment. Each word rang like a bell. Then came the civil ruling. They would lose the house, pay damages, and issue a formal apology, broadcast on the same news station that aired my interview. I didn't cry. Not until I was back outside, standing in the sunlight, when a little girl walked up to me. She couldn't have been older than 7. She tugged my sleeve and said, "You're the lady who told her story. My grandma says you're brave." I knelt down and smiled. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who got tired of being quiet." That night, back at the safe house, I opened a new journal. Not to write pain, but to write peace. I wrote letters to myself. To Lily. To the baby I lost. To the woman I had been and the woman I had become. And then I wrote something else. The first line of a new book. Not a diary. Memoir. The full truth. Thomas smiled when he saw me writing again. "You're not done, are you?" he asked. I looked at him. Not even close. The morning after the verdict, the world outside my window felt different. It was quiet. Not the kind of silence that once trapped me in a room with no windows, but the sacred quiet of resolution. The birds still sang. The wind still hummed through the trees. But I was no longer invisible. And yet, I didn't know what to do with the noise inside me. Because for all the applause, the justice, the headlines, I was still trying to remember how to be free. That week, my phone rang more than it had in 20 years. News stations, podcast hosts, publishing houses, even a film agent from Los Angeles who said something about optioning the rights to my incredible survival story. Hollywood wants to turn you into a movie, Thomas chuckled as he handed me the phone. And blinked. A movie. Once, I couldn't even get my own son to listen when I said I didn't want to move. Now strangers were bidding to buy my story. Should have felt like victory. But inside I was drifting. Because there's something they don't tell you about surviving. When the fight ends, the quiet can be even louder than the war. I spent my days walking the garden path behind Thomas's safe house. The tulips were beginning to fade. Summer was sneaking in slow and certain. I often found myself thinking about Lily. She hadn't come to the trial. She hadn't called. Not even a letter. When I asked Margaret about her, she handed me a sealed envelope that had arrived weeks ago but had somehow been forgotten in the chaos. It was addressed to me, in Lily's handwriting. I sat under the dogwood tree, unfolded the letter, and read. Dear Grandma, I don't know what to say. I saw everything. Interview, the trial, the blog, and I can't stop crying. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what my mom and dad did to you. Thought you left us. That you were tired. They told me you were sick and didn't want to see anyone. I believed them. I was 13. And now I feel like I let you down. I should have questioned it. I should have visited. I should have looked for you. But I didn't. And I'll carry that forever. If you'll let me, I'd like to see you again. Just once. Love. Lily. I pressed the paper to my chest and sobbed. For 7 years, I'd imagined Lily had forgotten me. But she hadn't. She'd been lied to too. Just like me. I called her that evening. Her voice cracked when she answered. Grandma, she whispered. Yes, baby. It's me. And in that moment, I felt like I was being stitched back together. Lily visited 2 days later. She looked so grown, 20 now, with her father's eyes but a softness I hadn't seen in years. She brought flowers. Not roses. Daffodils, my favorite. I remembered, she said, placing them gently in a vase. You used to say daffodils were stubborn like you. They bloom even in frost. I laughed. I guess I did say that. We sat on the porch for hours, unraveling lost time. She asked questions. I gave answers. She cried. I held her hand. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said, I want to be like you, Grandma. Brave. I looked at her. No, Lily. You'll be better. But with the reunion came new pain. The media wouldn't let go. They camped outside the safe house. They followed Lily. They dug into every corner of my life. Even neighbors who once ignored me were now pitching in gossip to tabloids. Celeste's secret brother speaks out. Did the woman who roared fake her own disappearance? The noise returned, not from the silence of my past, but from the chaos of my present. I had spent years being invisible. Now I couldn't disappear even if I tried. Thomas suggested I take a trip. Somewhere quiet. Just us and the open road. So we packed a bag, left the safe house behind, and drove down to the coast. We stayed in a small cabin near the ocean. For the first time in years I saw the sea. Its waves didn't ask questions. Its wind didn't need explanations. I sat in a rocking chair on the porch and started writing again. Not about Carter or May. Not even about the trial. But about healing. 'Cause I was finally learning how. That night I got a call from Margaret. Celeste, she said. We got another letter. From an editor at Harper & Leeds. They want to publish your memoir. National release. Bookstores. Libraries. The works. I felt the breath leave my lungs. After everything, after the silence, the cage, the years of being erased, they wanted to put my voice in ink. Yes, I said. Are you sure? Margaret asked. You don't have to. I want to, I said. Because stories deserve to live. especially the ones we're told to bury. We returned home a week later to find a letter waiting for me. Not from a publisher. From me. It was handwritten. 2 pages. No return address. Celeste, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know why I'm writing this except that I saw your interview. I watched the trial. I see now what I didn't want to admit. I was cruel. I let Carter talk me into things I never imagined I could do. And then I convinced myself you deserved it. But you didn't. You were always kind to me. And I turned that kindness into a weapon. See you now. And I'm ashamed. I don't want redemption. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I didn't cry. Not for her. Not anymore. But I folded the letter and tucked it into my journal. Because forgiveness isn't always for the other person. Sometimes it's for the story. So we know how far we've come. And how not to go back. The morning my book was released, I didn't hear birds or see sunlight. I heard silence. The kind that comes before a storm. I sat at the kitchen table with Thomas, a hot cup of tea in one hand and the newspaper in the other. The headline stretched in bold across the front page. Locked away, silenced, forgotten. Celeste Holloway's memoir breaks the nation's heart. Just below it was a photo of me. Not the one with tears in my eyes during the trial, but a portrait Lily had taken 2 weeks earlier, where I smiled, eyes firm, face proud. I never expected to see my face in print again. Not like this. Not as a woman who roared. Thomas looked up from his coffee. You did it, Celeste. I nodded, but my hands were trembling. Because deep down I knew something was still coming. I had carried silence for so long. And silence doesn't leave without a fight. The memoir's launch set off a wave I wasn't ready for. Bookstores sold out in a day. People wrote letters from all over the country. Strangers telling me I gave them hope, that my story made them feel less alone. But with the praise came scrutiny. And with scrutiny came questions. Especially about a small line in chapter 12. One I barely remembered writing. And though Carter and May shut me away, they weren't the first to try and silence me. I meant it as a passing reflection. But a journalist from Chicago saw it differently. They called my publisher. Then my lawyer. And me. Mrs. Holloway, the woman said on the phone. I think there's more to your story than even you realize. What do you mean? I've uncovered something about your sister. Evelyn. Froze. Evelyn. My baby sister. The one I hadn't spoken to in over 50 years. She had disappeared from my life like a ghost in the wind. Married young, ran off to Michigan, and stopped returning my letters after 1971. I assumed she'd died or simply moved on. Now someone was saying her name like a match to dry leaves. 2 days later, an envelope arrived at the house. No return address. Just one word on the back. Truth. Inside was a photocopy of an old medical intake form from 1976. Patient name. Evelyn Holloway Grant. Facility. Ridgeview Psychiatric Institute. Diagnosis. Hysteria, delusional depression, confabulation. There were scribbled notes in the margin. She insists her sister was hidden in a locked room. Claims the family covered it up. Uncooperative. Recommends sedation and long-term residential care. My vision blurred. The world tilted. Evelyn had tried to tell my story before I even realized I had one. They institutionalized her for it. Silenced her. Just like they tried to silence me. I showed the papers to Thomas, who turned pale. Celeste. This means someone knew what Carter and May were capable of. Back then. Long before it ever happened to you. My knees buckled. What if Carter learned how to disappear me by watching how the family dealt with Evelyn? What if I wasn't the first? What if I was just the next in line? I reached out to Margaret, my attorney. Find her, I said. Find my sister. Dead or alive, I need the truth. The search took a week. 7 agonizing days of dead ends, shredded records, and wrong numbers. Until finally Margaret called. I found someone, she said. She's in Ohio. A long-term care facility. They call her Eve now. My heart beat so loudly I could barely hear the rest. She's 80. She's frail. But she asked for you. The drive to Ohio was long and gray. Every mile felt like stepping deeper into a part of myself I thought had been lost forever. When I walked into the nursing home, a nurse guided me down a sterile hallway with white tile floors and the faint smell of lavender and bleach. She stopped outside room 12B. "She's awake," the nurse said. "And she's been waiting." I stepped inside. There she was. Evelyn. Older. Smaller. But unmistakable. Her eyes met mine and lit up. "Celeste," she whispered. I didn't speak. I just fell to my knees beside her chair and sobbed. "I thought you were dead," I cried. "I thought I was crazy," she whispered. We spent hours talking. She told me everything. How she had come home one night in 1976 and heard voices behind the walls of our uncle's house, an attic room locked from the outside. How she tried to tell someone, anyone. But our family called her unstable. They committed her before she could go public. "They always knew how to hide women like us," Evelyn said. "The inconvenient ones." I gripped her hand. "Not anymore." The story broke a week later. 2 sisters, 1 silence. A family's legacy of erasure exposed. Reporters traced a pattern. Multiple women in our family tree labeled unstable. Hidden away, erased from history. My memoir had cracked the door open. Evelyn's truth blew it off its hinges. Together we weren't just survivors. We were a revolution. One night, as we sat together watching the sunset from her window, she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever wonder why they were so afraid of us?" Smiled. "Because we told the truth. And they weren't ready to hear it." I always thought the end of my story would be quiet. That I'd pass on with a whisper, remembered only as the lady in the ivy-covered house. Maybe a sweet line in the town paper. Celeste Holloway, beloved grandmother, passed peacefully at home. But that was before they locked me away. Before they tried to make me disappear. Before I found my voice, and refused to let it go. Now I was no longer writing in secret. I was reading it out loud for the world to hear. The crowd was larger than I'd imagined. The university auditorium was packed. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder at the back. Students sat cross-legged in the aisles. Grandmothers, mothers, daughters, women who had carried their own silences for decades. The banner behind me read, "Celeste Holloway, from silence to strength." Beside me sat Evelyn, my sister, my survivor in arms, her hand in mine, her cheeks wet with pride. The moderator leaned into the microphone. "And now, the woman who reminded us all that it is never too late to speak the truth, Mrs. Celeste Holloway." I stood slowly, leaning on my cane, my spine straight as a flagpole. When I reached the podium, I took a breath so deep, I felt 75 years of silence crack apart inside my ribs. "I want to begin," I said, "by telling you something no one ever told me when I was locked in that room. You are not crazy for remembering. You are not dramatic for feeling pain. You are not alone." The room fell silent. I was locked away in a windowless room for 7 years. Not because I was dangerous or confused or sick. But because I was inconvenient. Because I knew things they didn't want me to say. A murmur rolled through the crowd. My son and daughter-in-law put me there. But they weren't the first in our family to hide inconvenient women. My sister Evelyn was silenced before me. Others before her. I looked out at the women watching. I am not here to punish them anymore. That would be too small a victory. I am here to open the door they tried to shut. For good. I held up a copy of my memoir. This isn't just my story. It's yours. It's ours. And if I have one legacy left to give, let it be this. No matter how long they keep you in the dark, your truth will find the light. After the event, people lined up to meet me. Some hugged me without a word. Some whispered, "Thank you," like I had saved them from something they didn't know they were drowning in. One girl, maybe 19, pressed a folded note into my palm. Later, when I read it, it said, "They told me to stop asking questions. But now I know why I have to keep asking." Lena, age 19. That night, I sat with Evelyn on my porch. Autumn wind carried the smell of cinnamon and soil. The garden, neglected for years, was in full bloom again, just like me. Evelyn leaned her head on my shoulder. "Do you think they'll remember us?" Smiled. "They already do." The final twist came the following week. A letter arrived. No return address. The same handwriting as before. It was from May. "Celeste, I was wrong. I didn't just lock you away because I was afraid of your mind. I locked you away because I found the letters. The ones from your first husband." Froze. Carter didn't know. I never told him. But I knew if your story got out, if those letters ever surfaced, everything we built would crumble. You were never just a threat to the family. You were the truth we built everything to avoid. She included a final line. "You may have the world's sympathy now, but you also carry a legacy no one's prepared to hear." My hand shook, because I knew what she meant. The letters. The ones I had written to my first love, Jameson Bell. The ones Carter never knew existed. The ones that revealed the real reason I'd left my first husband, because he'd been involved in political scandals, violence, and disappearances in the 60s. The kind of truth that ruins careers, lives. And I still had the letters. Buried. Sealed. Waiting. I walked to the fireplace, knelt slowly, and pulled out a hollow stone in the hearth. Inside, a sealed metal tin. Opened it. 12 letters. Faded. Ink still legible. Secrets the world had forgotten. But I hadn't. Not yet. I stared at them. I could burn them. End the story here. But I didn't. Because silencing myself again after all this would make me one of them. And I wasn't one of them anymore. So I made a choice. The same choice I made in that windowless room. Picked up my pen. And I began to write the next book. This time not just for me, but for every woman whose truth was labeled too dangerous to tell. If Celeste's story moved you, if you believe no voice should ever be locked away, hit that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories of betrayal, survival, and redemption. Let Celeste's roar echo far beyond Briar Hill. Because no matter your age, your past, or your silence, your story still matters.